This is the Northwest Tank Line Super Bowl show coming to you from Radio Row, Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas. 23rd time we have been at this event. And of course, always great seeing some old friends. And one of them is Thomas Dimitroff, former general manager of the Atlanta Falcons. Gave me grief today because I wasn't wearing my BC Lions shirt that I was wearing yesterday. He goes, "Where's the Lions shirt?" I said, "Hey, man, where's your Guelph Griffin shirt?"
And I loved it, and you're right. Where is my Guelph Griffin shirt? Anyway, but you always look good in that BC Lions shirt.
Thank you. Eric Eager, of course, are from Sumer Sports. We'll talk about that in a second. Talk about that last year. We're going to get into it more this year. But, you know, it's kind of funny. We're talking about the Lions and the CFL. It's amazing, man, just the connection, how small of a world it is. We talked to Tim Terry last night, Director of Player Personnel for the Chiefs. He was a part of a Grey Cup championship team in Hamilton. You know, we talked to Greenlaw and Brandon Allen from the 49ers. They played with Keon Hatcher. Johnny Holland coached a couple of years in BC with the Lions. So it's one degree of separation all the time.
Look, I'll tell you this, and maybe this isn't the right thing to say. I want Mike O'Shea in the NFL. I don't know where you guys are with him. He's a Guelph Griffin. I think Mike O'Shea is a fantastic football coach, and I would love to see him one day come down here and be a D coordinator, if not more.
Why does – and, hey, you know this. I mean, you're a GM. How come you don't see as much – you see players going from the CFL to the NFL, but you rarely see coaches going from the CFL.
It's a scheme thing. I mean, but I've asked around, interestingly enough, not that I'm Mike O'Shea's agent. I've asked a number of my GMs, would you in fact interview a guy like Mike O'Shea, having his history being in the league? I said, you have a dude that is through and through leader, player guy, has been there, has done great things on the field as a player and as a coach, and I got what am I trying to say? I thought there was really good response. Like, yes, if his situation came up, there would be an interview for that. So I think there are people that are interested. They just know that they're going to have to come down here and learn the system more. And
the other thing, too, it's a complete change of lifestyle. I mean, in the sense of, now you're at the office a hell of a lot more than you are in the CFL, right? So, and I remember Jeff Tedford when he came to Vancouver and coached the Lions for the year. And for him, it was like, I can be home at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't have to go recruiting. I don't have to do this. And it's just a different world sometimes. Thomas Dimitroff is our guest, along with Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. Guys, first off, for people that are listening to you guys for the first time, Eric, I'll let you explain. Tell the folks what Sumer Sports is about.
Yeah, we're an analytics company that serves both the B2B side, which is NFL teams, college teams, agencies. We use both scouting data, traditional scouting data, the stuff that Thomas, 30 years in the NFL, ways he's evaluated players, as well as analytical data. So things like tracking data, the XY data and chips and things like that. We build those things up, and we try to take the team's IP and help them more efficiently build their rosters. And then we have a B2C side, which is at sumersports.com. We have our big game preview this week, where we help players try to win at gaming, fantasy football, just try to understand the game better. So we have kind of two approaches, which is helping the teams win, but also helping people who love football win.
Do you know it's interesting when you talk about analytics? I know you guys talked about this last year. And that is the fact that you look for value. Like, I'm not a huge fantasy football guy, but I love fantasy baseball. I've been doing it since – our league's been around since 1990. And to me, it's always about finding value, right? And sometimes you use analytics to find that value. Unfortunately, that information is out there all the time now for everybody. So everybody is kind of hunting the same value. But I think that's when you look at sports, particularly in a salary cap era. Hey, if you're in the National Hockey League, the guy who scores 40 goals and you're paying $6 million for isn't going to be the difference maker. The guy who's on an entry-level deal that scores 30 will be. And I think, Thomas, you talked about it a couple of years ago. I think it was last year, actually, where you said one of the reasons the Chiefs are doing so well is because of the value that they're getting out of their secondary.
I think, that's a great point. And by the way, Eric and I have argued. He wanted me to cut Matt Ryan before he got to his his next contract. I'm joking, of course. We've bantered about that, right? As a GM, you have to make a lot of decisions, and a lot of decisions are made with a lot of other things in consideration. Of course, now, if I were to ever go back as a general manager, in a heartbeat, I would hire, my right-hand guy would be an Eric Eager, right? It would be a guy that was there with all the data to say, Thomas, I get your football, here's the data. Now let's look at and compare the decisions. So I don't mean to protract here, but that is a big thing.
Well, it's exactly what you're saying, though. It's like everybody knows now the rookie deal quarterback thing, right? Every single Super Bowl except the one Thomas was in a few years ago has had a team built around a quarterback making rookie deal money. That edge is gone, right? Now you have to think about, okay, Now is it defensive tackle? Is that the new edge? Now that teams are playing those two highs, is it a defensive tackle? Is that the new premium position that no one is considering? Is it restoring the running back position? Is it tight end? Is it the interior offensive line? And to your point about fantasy football, it's like once everybody's talking about it, once everybody in the league is traded information, at that point, your job as a GM and as an analytics person is not to mess it up, right? And then to find an edge, you actually have to go and people like me and Thomas have to talk to each other and be like, is this actually going to work? Is that actually going to work? And move forward on that.
I'm going to throw this to you guys because do you have to be a contrarian to find value? And I say that because I look at baseball and Billy Beane, what he did. Everything was about on-base percentage, right? And now you see teams in baseball, it's about the three outcomes. It's homers, strikeouts, and walks, right? The guy who can bunt, the guy who can run hit and runs, the guy who can steal, those guys aren't valued anymore. So if they're not valued, is that where you find the value? Can you go contrarian to find value?
Well, that was Belichick's initial moat in the NFL was, there was a ton of 3-4 defenses in the NFL. And then over time, they all emerged to 4-3 defenses. And then guys like Ted Washington and, some of those outside backers, they were not recruited well into colleges because the body type was different. And then they were available for relatively cheap. And so the pendulum swung one way, and so then there was value. And yeah, to your point, you don't necessarily have to be contrarian, but analytics allows you to say, okay, the rule of thumb is to shoot more threes in basketball, right? The rule of thumb is to steal fewer bases in baseball. Analytics can tell you, well, exactly how many should you. So if everybody goes 5% too far, then you can pull back and buy back on it, just like we're in Vegas here, just like it is in sports betting and things like that.
Eric Eager and Thomas Dimitroff are our guests from Sumer Sports talking about analytics and football. Thomas, how do you weigh analytics in terms of decision making? And never mind rosters, but let's talk about in-game management. I mean, you see what Dan Campbell did and the heat that he got. Yet at the same time, it's what kind of brought them there. But, man, I look at situations. I mean, I look at Berrios this year with the Blue Jays in that playoff game. They yank him, and he's feeling it. He's cruising. A couple years ago, same thing with Blake Snell, right? 5 2/3 of one-hit baseball, whatever, with 7 strikeouts. And we're going to take him out because it's the third time in the order, and Tampa winds up losing the game. How do you balance the gut feel of what's going on in a game compared to what the analytics are telling you?
Well, anytime you have a strong use of analytics, from and most teams do. They have these big old binders they're looking at, on trying to make decisions. I would say this. In Detroit, there's no doubt in my mind, Brad Holmes, the general manager, has sat down prior to even kicking this off, and have agreed that that's the way they're going to approach it as a team. A head coach is going to go to the analytics and make a decision off of what's presented. However, there are times and places, and Eric and I will battle a little bit about this on the second decision, with Dan Campbell, right? I'm saying the way it was, kick it. You're saying what?
I'm saying that if you kick, the best case scenario is you're in a tie game with the team that you haven't stopped all second half.
See, I'm with you. I don't have as much decision with the first one as I do with the second one. The second one, to me, I think they'd scored on the 4 previous possessions, right? And they're putting points on the board. You can't be settling for field goals, right? You're bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Well, and your kicker hadn't made.
Thomas just sighed, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, and my thing is that I've seen this a number of times, and we forget this because when you fail with the grain, we forget, right? But I remember, the last time the Chiefs lost to the Bengals, they had a similar situation where they're down 3 and they settled for a long field goal and missed, and the Bengals never let them hold the ball again. And it's like you take the ball out of your best player's hands and put it in your kicker's hands. The kicker's good, right? But you sort of feel like if you're the Lions, you're Dan Campbell, you're Brad Holmes, you spent this entire offseason building a great offensive line and building and building and building and winning that way, and all of a sudden you put the ball in the hands of a kicker who you signed in December.
Hey, one thing before we let you go, Thomas, you touched on this yesterday. I think you were talking to Brian Baldinger down there.
Yeah.
And I was laughing because I was thinking about my fantasy baseball pool. The fact is, everybody's got all these sites and stuff that they use. I don't believe in some of those sites, but if I know you're using that site, now I know what you're thinking. And I imagine that holds true in football as well. Even if you're not a huge believer in analytics or certain models, if you know other teams are using that intel, now you've got an edge on that team and perhaps some tendencies and things they want to do.
Well, the tendency thing is a big thing, and as we chase that around, it's a marginal gain, right? Marginal advantage. I believe in it for sure.
All right, guys, great stuff. If people want more info, how do they go about it?
Sumersports.com, big game preview, 41 pages, all your favorite stats, prop bets, everything for the Super Bowl to get you ready for Sunday's game.
And by the way, if anyone's listening from Guelph and people are listening via podcast, all that stuff, send Dimitroff a swag bag, golf shirt, hat, shorts, whatever. He needs some Guelph gear.
Can you get our Canadian brethren using Sumer? We have the best graphics in the world. Check it out, please. I keep telling all my buddies in Toronto, my brother included, help us. And we don't get the following in Canada for Sumer Sport. I think you guys
I'm from
would love
Minnesota.
it.
I'm basically Canadian.
All right,
follow
we'll
us,
do
yeah.
it. Guys, thanks for doing this.